The house didn't exist on any map. No number on the mailbox. No mailbox at all. Just a narrow gravel path coiling up a steep hill, and warm yellow light bleeding through the curtains like a secret someone forgot to keep. Ryan killed the engine. Nobody spoke. Danny was already bent over his phone, jaw tight, staring at the blinking blue on the tracker app. She's still inside. 38 minutes now. I pushed the van door open and my boots hit the gravel like they didn't really want to. The air smelled of jasmine and cigarette smoke, and somewhere far off in the dark, a woman laughed. Not nervous laughter, easy laughter. The kind that comes when no one unexpected is watching. We hadn't planned to get this far. What started as a low-grade suspicion became a theory, then a bet, and now it had teeth. Our wives, Melissa, Courtney, and Dana, had all told us the same story, word for word, like they'd run through it together before delivering it. Girls' night, spa in the afternoon, cocktails after. Don't wait up. But none of us were foolish enough to ignore the signs underneath the script. Dana had worn the pearl earrings she hadn't touched since our honeymoon in Savannah. Courtney shaved her legs at 6 in the morning, before Ryan even had his coffee. And Melissa left the house in a long wool coat she had never once worn for me. Not once in 4 years. And now here we were. 3 men standing at the edge of a gravel driveway in the middle of nowhere, outside a house we were never supposed to find, staring at windows that glowed like they were hiding every answer we were afraid to hear. I was the one who stepped forward first. We didn't knock. The door wasn't locked. It opened with a soft creak, like it had been expecting someone. Just not us. Inside, everything was warm and curated. Cushioned armchairs angled just so. A chandelier throwing soft gold light down a curved staircase. Jazz drifting through invisible speakers, the kind of jazz that sounds like low conversation. 3 wine glasses, half full, sitting on the console table near the entryway. A shoe rack beside the door. 3 pairs of heels. None of them belonged to Dana. That's when we heard it. Laughter, but not from the living room, not from upstairs. It was coming from below, from the basement. We followed the sound down a narrow carpeted staircase, hearts slamming against our ribs. I could barely breathe. My head was full of static and pressure. And the moment I reached the bottom step and saw what was down there, I swear I forgot how to blink. There are moments in life that don't announce themselves. They don't give you time to brace or compose yourself. They just arrive, and they rearrange everything. Every creak of those stairs felt like it echoed off the bones of the house itself. The deeper we descended, the thicker the air became. The laughter grew louder, but underneath it was something else. A steady, low rhythm, soft thuds and dim pulsing light. The unmistakable pulse of a party that didn't want to be found. We had no plan down there. No excuse. Just 3 exhausted, gutted husbands following the invisible thread of a betrayal they still couldn't fully believe. The last step opened into something between a lounge and a dream you can't shake. Velvet couches in dark burgundy. Gold accents on the shelving. Spotlights dimmed just low enough to soften intentions, but bright enough to expose them. A dozen people, maybe more. Not seated around a dinner table. Not standing at a bar. Moving. Intertwined. I spotted Courtney first. Ryan's wife. She was draped across one of the couches, her legs folded over a man in a silk shirt who was absolutely not her husband. She was laughing in that high, delighted way she used to when Ryan came home early with takeout and her favorite flowers. That laugh, the one I had only ever heard at birthday dinners, was now pointed somewhere else entirely. Danny froze the moment he found Melissa in the corner, slow dancing with someone neither of us recognized. Her hands were pressed flat against the man's chest. Her eyes were locked into his with something that looked dangerously close to belonging. She didn't look drunk. She didn't look like a woman escaping something. She looked like a woman arriving. And then my eyes found Dana. She wasn't dancing. She was perched on a bar stool near the far wall, back arched slightly, fingertips tracing the rim of a wine glass, her head tilted toward a man who was whispering something close to her ear. She smiled before he even finished. Slow, unguarded, completely at ease. No guilt. No hesitation. She reached up and touched his face like it was the most natural thing in the world. I don't know why that broke me more than anything else down there. But it did. Because I had spent 4 years trying to earn that exact smile. I had worked overtime, stayed quiet when I should have spoken, rearranged my entire life around her comfort. And she was giving that smile away like it cost her nothing. Like I had never been worth it to begin with. My knees buckled. I leaned against the cold wall and pressed my palm flat against the concrete, trying to keep my breath from becoming audible. Danny took a step forward, but I caught his sleeve and held him back. We weren't ready to be seen yet. We needed to understand first. That's when the man next to Dana said something that made my stomach drop through the floor like a stone into still water. Your husband still thinks you're at that spa place downtown, right? She laughed. She actually laughed. He thinks I'm with Kayla and some girls from work. He even offered to pick me up later. The man grinned. He's so devoted. Ignorance keeps them loyal, though. That was the moment the full shape of it appeared. This wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a moment of weakness or a single night that got out of hand. It was organized. It had been running for months, maybe longer. It had a location, a routine, and a language we were never meant to speak. And we, Ryan, Danny, and I, had been the punchline, the background characters, the loyal, clueless props in our wives' real lives. On the far wall were framed photos, past parties, different outfits, same location, different men. And in almost every single one, Dana was smiling. Not one of those photos included me. Not one frame of our marriage had ever looked like what I was staring at. So we backed away, slowly, silently. We climbed those stairs like ghosts retreating from the scene of their own deaths, one step at a time, until the cool night air hit us at the top and slapped us back into the world. None of us spoke until we were back in the van. Ryan broke the silence first. We can't go back home and pretend we didn't see that. Danny's voice was barely above a whisper. She packed a toothbrush. I saw it in her bag before she left. And me? I just stared out the window, gripping the armrest until my fingers went white, because I wasn't wondering anymore whether Dana still loved me. I was wondering if she ever had at all. The drive home was the longest of my life. Danny sat rigid in the front seat, staring straight ahead like the road owed him something. Ryan kept tapping his foot against the van floor, rhythmically, mechanically, like he was trying to knock loose whatever was rattling around inside him. I sat in the back and chewed the inside of my cheek until I tasted copper. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was dense and alive, thick with shame and confusion and the specific kind of grief that comes when the past rewrites itself in front of your eyes. We weren't just husbands anymore. We were witnesses. When I finally walked through the front door just past midnight, the silence hit me like a warning. Dana wasn't home yet. I stood in the living room, staring at the couch, then at the empty wine glass on the coffee table, then at the framed photo of us in front of the Grand Teton on our second anniversary. Back when smiles didn't need to be performed. I don't know what led me to the closet. Maybe I was looking for proof that I was wrong. But what I found wasn't just a sign. It was a timeline. Behind her coats, tucked inside a box I had genuinely never noticed, were 2 small photo albums. I opened the first one and instantly wanted to put it back down. But I couldn't stop. Parties I hadn't been invited to. Vacations she had described differently. Then the photos shifted. Dana with men I had never been introduced to. Hotel rooms. Backyard gatherings in places I didn't recognize. And then there were the letters. Dozens of folded notes, printed emails, messages that began as something professional and transformed, gradually, into something else entirely. Nicknames, inside jokes, explicit details. One of them read, "When he's at that conference in Denver, you're mine again." She had printed them. She had saved them. She had hidden them inside our home. I sat on the floor for a long time, knees pulled to my chest, heart so loud in my ears I thought I might go deaf. The tears didn't come. Instead, I felt hollow, like my body had switched to autopilot while my mind hovered somewhere above, watching a stranger discover, piece by piece, how completely disposable he had always been to the woman sleeping in his bed. Just after 1 in the morning, I heard her keys in the lock. Casual. Unhurried. The sound of someone who had no idea anything had changed. She walked in smelling like perfume and red wine and something I couldn't identify but immediately hated. I didn't answer when she spoke. I stood there holding one of the photos, her in a hotel bed in Charleston with a man who wasn't me, and I watched her face go through its changes. Confusion first, then a flicker of something cold, then the calculation settling in behind her eyes. She didn't cry. She didn't deny. She just walked past me and said, "Let me explain." I followed her to the bedroom. She moved ahead with the ease of someone who believed she could still manage this. She sat on the edge of the bed and patted the mattress beside her, like we were about to have a conversation about weekend plans. I didn't sit. "Who is he?" My voice came out smaller than I'd intended, but it filled the room. She fidgeted with the hem of her dress. Then she shrugged. "That was a long time ago." My jaw locked. "There are dates on the photos, Dana. 8 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago. Don't do that to me." She exhaled and finally met my eyes. "Wade, you've been distant for a long time. You've been living inside your own head." I didn't want it to come to this. She wasn't crying. She wasn't even panicking. Her tone was calm and practiced, like she had rehearsed this version of events 100 times in the car on the way home. I opened the second photo album and held up a picture of her in the black dress, the dress I had bought for our 4th anniversary dinner. She wasn't with me in the photo. She was on a rooftop in downtown Nashville with a man whose arm was draped around her shoulders like he had always belonged there. "That dress. You told me you ruined it in the wash. You said you threw it away." She said nothing. "You wore it for him." Still nothing. Not even a flinch. I thought about every sacrifice I had made quietly and without complaint. The job offer in Seattle I turned down because she didn't want to move. The trip to Montana with my college roommates I canceled because she needed help renovating the guest room. The years of editing myself, making myself smaller, quieter, more accommodating. All of it poured into a future I was apparently building alone. I gave up everything for this. I gave up things I'll never get back. She looked away. "I never asked you to do any of that." That hit harder than anything she could have screamed. Because it was true. I had volunteered everything, and she was treating it the same way she'd treat a bad investment she had never endorsed. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't throw anything or punch the wall. I reached into my nightstand drawer and pulled out a sealed envelope I had prepared 48 hours earlier. Inside was a draft separation agreement. Not legal. Not final. Just the line in the sand I had been too afraid to draw until now. I slid it across the bed. "Is this a threat?" "No. It's a mirror. You made your choices. Now I'm making mine." She set the paper down and said, "You know this isn't just about me. You haven't been present in this marriage for a long time, Wade. You live in your own world." I nodded slowly. "And you lived in someone else's arms." She eventually lay back and turned away from me the way she always did when she wanted the conversation to be over. And I understood in that moment that no matter what happened next, nothing about my life was going to look the same. I didn't sleep. I sat on the edge of the bed until the sky turned the color of old pewter, staring at the ceiling fan spinning above everything I no longer recognized. When I finally got up, the house felt foreign. The photos on the hallway wall seemed to mock me. The one from her cousin's wedding in Asheville, her leaning into me like I was the safest place she knew. The one from the pumpkin farm 2 Octobers ago, the day she convinced me to wear the flannel shirt I hated. I remembered laughing that day. I only understood now that I was the only one laughing honestly. Downstairs, I was making coffee with shaking hands when her phone buzzed on the kitchen island. I shouldn't have picked it up, but I did. The screen lit up with a name I recognized, Shelley, her work friend. The one who always made comments about how I was too earnest, too predictable, too uncomplicated for Dana's world. The text read, "So did he figure it out? Or are you still playing it cool?" That message. It was worse than anything I had found in the closet. Because this wasn't private anymore. This was entertainment. I was a running joke with a group chat and an audience, and none of them had ever thought the punchline would walk in the door. I opened the thread. What I found didn't just shatter what was left of my trust. It rewrote the entire history of my marriage. For months, Dana and her circle had been running a group chat that cataloged everything. Outings with code names, husband awareness ratings, screenshots of Ryan's tender goodnight texts, followed by laughing emojis. A screen grab of Danny asking Melissa which restaurant she wanted for their anniversary, captioned with fire emojis and zero irony. And then I found Dana's message, sent just 9 days ago. I swear he still thinks I'm the same girl he met at that cookout in Knoxville. Poor guy wouldn't survive one evening in our world. I locked the phone, set it on the counter, walked outside in my socks and sat in the driveway for 20 minutes staring at the garage door. Then I texted Ryan and Danny. They all knew. It's organized. Come to my place now. Ryan was already outside when I pulled up, hollow-eyed, disheveled, like sleep had been a language he'd forgotten overnight. Danny arrived 15 minutes after, and the three of us sat in Ryan's garage in total silence for a full minute before anyone spoke. I handed them the printed screenshots. Ryan didn't even finish the first page before he stood up and started pacing, repeating under his breath. She smiled at me when she said she was going to the spa. She smiled and she kissed me on the cheek. It wasn't only the cheating. It was the architecture of it. The planning, the teamwork, the sheer effortlessness with which they had woven it into everyday life. Our marriages weren't broken. They were performed. Ryan said, we have to confront them. Tonight. No, I said. That's what they'd expect. A scene, tears, blame, and then 3 weeks later we're the ones apologizing for how we handled it. We do this on our terms. Quietly, precisely, and in a way they can't talk their way out of. Danny looked at me for a long moment. You're saying we need to set a trap. I'm saying if this was ever a game to them, we're the ones holding the cards now. What followed over the next 2 weeks wasn't fueled by rage. It was driven by clarity. Ryan, Danny, and I built a shared digital folder, titled something mundane, something invisible, and began loading it like a vault. Screenshots, video clips, receipts from restaurants none of us had ever been taken to, voicemail recordings, a 60-second clip of Courtney on a video call from the guest room, wearing lingerie she'd bought with their joint card, saying, "He still thinks I'm just exhausted from work. Babe, we weren't alone. We reached out to 2 other men from the same circle. Marcus had been divorced for 7 months. He had stayed silent out of embarrassment until now. Kevin found voice notes and screenshots on his own but had no one to bring them to. When we laid everything out in front of him, he sat at Ryan's kitchen table and cried, then looked up and said, 'Tell me what I can do. 5 of us now.' The timing delivered itself. Shelley was throwing another party. Same address. Saturday night. Dana was luminous when she told me. She even kissed me on the cheek, which she hadn't done in weeks. Nothing big, she said. Just some of the girls, a few work friends, wine and music. Don't wait up. I smiled. Sounds fun. Should I expect you home? She hesitated for just a half second. Maybe not until morning. That's fine, I said. Just text me. She didn't text me. She also didn't know I was parked less than 100 yards from her front door. At 11:08 p.m., Dana arrived at the house wearing the black dress from the photo, the anniversary dress, the one she told me she'd thrown away. I watched her walk up the path and disappear through the door, and something in my chest that had been clenched for weeks finally released. Not into pain, into purpose. At 1:42 a.m., Marcus sent the message. A scheduled group text to every number connected to the party circle, screenshot embedded, containing a link that appeared to lead to new party photos. The link redirected to a private page with nothing on it except 4 words. We know everything. Goodbye. The response was almost instant. Phones lit up in windows. Silhouettes stopped moving. One woman's voice rose loud enough to hear from the road. We watched Dana go completely still, standing alone near the window, staring at her screen for a full 20 seconds like the air had been removed from the room. Then we sent the final message to Courtney, to Melissa, to Dana, all at the same moment from 3 separate phones. We saw the shoes by the door. We heard the laughter. We stayed quiet long enough. I powered down my phone, closed the laptop lid, and sat back in the dark of the van as the windows of that house erupted into chaos behind us. Ryan sat motionless. Danny stared straight ahead. Nobody said a word for a long time. There was no celebration. There was no release. Just three men breathing quietly in the dark, finally no longer drowning in a silence that had never belonged to them. The morning after didn't feel like victory. It felt like standing on a ledge you had already stepped off, weightless for a moment before you understood where you were falling. I sat alone in my car outside a storage unit I had rented 3 weeks earlier under a false name, in a part of Charlotte I never usually drove through. Inside the unit were boxes I had packed silently over several nights while Dana slept and believed everything was normal. My clothes, my documents, the photo of my mother at her retirement party, the watch my father gave me the weekend before he passed, sitting in its small velvet box. Everything I intended to take with me when I stopped pretending that the house I shared with Dana was still my home. By 8:15 in the morning, my phone had rung 9 times. All Dana. Her texts ranged from furious to frightened. Where are you? What is this? You're overreacting. And finally, please just talk to me. But she hadn't wanted to talk in months. Now that the silence was no longer under her control, she was terrified of it. Ryan drove through the night to his brother's place in Raleigh. Danny left a handwritten note on Melissa's dresser, drove to the airport before dawn, and boarded a flight to Phoenix with nothing but a carry-on and a jacket. We didn't coordinate our exits, not because we didn't trust each other, but because this last part wasn't something we could do together. We had carried each other through the collapse. The aftermath was something each man had to walk alone. Dana found the apartment I had secretly rented 10 days earlier. I still don't know how. I heard her voice before I saw her, rising through the gap under the door. Wade, you can't just vanish. We have a mortgage. We have bills. You don't get to walk away because of one mistake. One mistake. I opened the door just wide enough to see her. She looked nothing like the woman I had watched in that basement lounge. Calm and radiant and perfectly at home in her other life. Her mascara was smeared. Her hair was unwashed. Her breathing was ragged. But she still didn't look sorry. She looked inconvenienced. She stepped forward to come inside, and I blocked the doorway with my body. You're not coming in. Wade, you humiliated me. I humiliated you. I said slowly. You had love letters printed out and saved in a box in our closet. Your friends had a running joke about how long it would take me to notice. And I humiliated you. I reached behind me and handed her a sealed envelope. Inside was a notarized document, a complete accounting of what I knew, what I had documented, and what I was legally entitled to walk away with. She scanned the pages. Her expression shifted from anger to something almost like awe. You really planned all of this. I did. And you couldn't once think about whether there was anything worth saving? I looked at her for a long moment. You didn't think I'd ever find out. That's not a marriage with a problem you fix. That's a performance I'm done watching. She stepped back, looked down at the envelope, turned and walked away. I closed the door quietly behind her. No Islam. No final declaración. Just a door shut gently on everything I used to think my life would be. 6 months later, I was sitting in a small coffee shop on the edge of Asheville. The kind of place where the barista already knows your order before you open your mouth and strangers nod at each other like they share something unspoken. Rain was sliding down the window glass. My coffee was too bitter and I hadn't fixed it. I realized somewhere between the second and third sip that I hadn't thought about Dana in 4 days. Not once. Not in anger, not in longing, not at all. I won't pretend getting here was clean or quick. The first weeks after I left were brutal in the way that only true emptiness can be. Air mattress on the floor. Ceiling stared at until dawn. Moments of second-guessing so severe I had to grip the edge of a sink just to stay inside myself. But then the calls stopped. The messages thinned. And one morning I woke up and didn't reach for my phone first thing. I made eggs. I sat on the steps outside and listened to the street. I existed without performing anything for anyone. Ryan eventually sent a photo, grinning wide in front of a red rock canyon somewhere outside Sedona. Danny stayed with his brother for 2 months and then got his own place in Wilmington. He started painting again. Something Melissa had always dismissed as a waste of weekends. Now he sells pieces online under a name she would never recognize, and every time we talk, his voice sounds different. Lighter, like a man who had been given back something he'd forgotten was his. As for me, I started writing again. Nothing for anyone else. Just small essays, private journals, thoughts I had spent years swallowing in a marriage where my inner life was considered background noise. I had been editing myself for so long that I'd nearly forgotten what my actual voice sounded like. Rediscovering it felt like being told for the first time that a language you'd been embarrassed to speak was actually beautiful. Last week, I met someone. Her name is Laura. We reached for the same book at the same moment in the same independent bookstore on a Tuesday afternoon, and the whole thing was so absurdly ordinary that I nearly laughed out loud. I was nervous. I probably said something awkward, but she laughed. Genuinely, easily, without any performance in it. We've had coffee 3 times since. Nothing serious. No declarations. Just 2 people trying to figure out who they are on their own, doing it side by side without anyone keeping score. And for the first time in what feels like a decade, I'm not afraid to be known. I'm not the man Dana betrayed. I'm not the fool who stood at the bottom of a basement staircase while his life rearranged itself around him. I'm not a name in a legal filing or the punchline of a group chat. I am Wade. I survived something I thought would end me, and I didn't win back the past. I stopped needing to. I built something better instead. A future where I never again have to wonder whether my presence matters to the person standing in front of me. And that quiet, ordinary, unperformed certainty is the only ending worth having.